I remember earlier people talking claims of like break up big tech, and the people on the left would call them MAGA socialists and like wanting to use the government to do all this stuff for the people. Uh, I would like to know exactly what it means to break up big tech, and I don't mean broad sweeping generalizations. I mean specifics. Like when you say break up big tech, what exactly precisely do you mean? And how do you go about accomplishing it and for what end?
Sure. I'll start by saying I think the easier thing to do before breaking up big tech is to just make these communications platforms common carriers. We already know how to do that. It's what the phone company is, right? At a certain point, call it a couple hundred billion dollars in market cap and a couple hundred million users, and congratulations, you are a common carrier. So that I think solves a lot of the censorship problem. I
Well,
do think we should probably go.
before we go past that, is
Yep.
that would not put a chilling effect on innovation, knowing that if you get too big, all of a sudden you're going to get taken over
No,
by these new
I don't think so.
regulations?
I don't think so. If you put the ceiling too low and you say like if you're a startup with 100 users, like obviously that changes it. But I think no, if you're a communications tool and you're worth X dollars, and especially if you're a public company and you've got 100 million users, if you become sort of tighten that up and study exactly what the definition should be. But basically, commonsensically, no, Facebook and Twitter, they're of a certain scale where you can afford to treat them differently than like a hair salon or a tiny startup. And I just don't buy the argument that like, oh, you can't ever possibly regulate anything no matter how big it is because that'll stifle entrepreneurship. I just don't buy it. And I think like 80% of people know that's purely a theoretical objection. So no, treat Facebook and treat Twitter as common carriers. We
I
know how
don't
to
mean
do that.
I don't mean to drill to be too much of a stickler on this, but as someone that invests in venture startups, you're gonna look at your startup founders and be like, we're gonna give you this money, but we know it's purely theoretical exercise that you might ever reach 100 million users, so don't worry about it. Is that literally what you're gonna tell guys when you
We'll
give them
say,
money?
no, here's the money. Go build an awesome business. I want you to build an awesome, successful, fantastic business. And if you become as powerful as Google or Facebook or Twitter, be prepared to be treated differently than our Series A or Series B companies. Like, come on, these companies have more power than most governments. And, they're not even like at this scale, they're not even private. People say like, Blake, who are you to tell Facebook how big it can be? It's a private company. Go build your own Facebook. And it's like, it's not a private company because it works closely with the White House and it takes direction from Jen Psaki about like what information to pull off the platform. We wouldn't want to spread any COVID information, right? And I think the Dems now use that FTC antitrust hammer, the threat of it, to sort of bludgeon Facebook into compliance. And that starts to look a lot more like corporate fascism or sort of technocratic oligarchy than any sort of pure free market. So no,
Uh,
I think Republicans have to be willing. You shouldn't just use state power indiscriminately. You should do it wisely, but we have to be willing to use state power to sort of rein in these companies. Otherwise, they're just going to have their way with us.
all right. So first step is declaring them common carriers. What's after that?
I think we should explore using antitrust to break face, for instance. I don't think Facebook should be able to have WhatsApp and Instagram and then Facebook Classic, all these different products, and then they just mine all the data from users and roll it up into sort of one central shared repository. And then they can turn around and use that to serve incredibly effective, I think, basically predatory targeted advertising to people. It's just unclear why you would allow something so big, such a behemoth, to own all of these separate businesses. Instagram could operate basically just as effectively from a consumer usage perspective as a standalone business. And so, why would we just let all of this corporate consolidation continue to exist? And Google's bought one company every year, or sorry, every week for the last 10 years, and they do it not because they're so excited about this new startup technology that they want to integrate in their platforms. They do it to stifle competition. Most of the time, they just buy the talent, squash the technology. They're in the business um, of just buying companies to make sure that they can stay big and entrench their own power. And at a certain point, I don't think you can allow that.
So you're in the Senate. You're there. It's you've won. Well, what are the concrete steps that you do? I mean, you common carrier, but after that, like where are we going with that?
Well,
You're gonna file antitrust. You're gonna push the FTC
I think you do a huge review of the
or
the current
SEC rather.
antitrust laws on the books.
Yeah.
just review the antitrust laws in the books. And I actually think it's very possible that they might not neatly apply to Facebook, to Google, right? Because these laws were written a long time ago for a very different context. We were worried about price gouging. So if you build the telegraph or the railroad, right, you have a natural monopoly. No one else is going to come do that again in that same geographical location. And so why, wouldn't you just jack the prices up? And that's really bad for consumers. But the laws that take care of that sort of define the consumer harm as a higher price. And that doesn't really neatly map onto Facebook, right? Because you don't pay to use Facebook's product. It's free. You don't pay to use the product because you are the product. And so that's very interesting. And if you just stick to the old definitions of consumer harm, then sort of by definition, Facebook's not harming anyone at all. It's free. How could it? It's free and people are volunteering to use it. So where's the harm? But I don't think people really have a good understanding of how much data Facebook is collecting about them or how much Google knows about them. And so I think we need a whole new suite of laws. We need to update the antitrust laws to sort of deal with modern networked monopoly internet companies. And we just need a whole new suite of data privacy laws. That it doesn't look like the European version, which I think is ham-handed, but I think the spirit of that is right. That people should be in charge of their own data. And it's really hard right now because you have a Congress that either is ideologically unwilling to do that, or the people that want to do that don't necessarily know how to do it. Because I think the Senate, for instance, is very old, and people are not exactly tech savvy. And then I don't think the Democrats care at all. I think the Democrats want these companies to get super big, and again, they love that fusion of corporate and state power because they think it'll benefit them.
Yeah.
So I just see hundreds of millions of Americans using these products every day, basically giving up, I think unwittingly, all this data, and it's just being used against them. And then the companies use the monopoly profits from that hyper effective advertising to then put their thumb on the scale in our elections. And so I just see that as a huge threat. If we don't do something about that, I think in 5 or 10 years, we're in a really dark place.
Yeah. So, for people that may not understand the full depths of this topic, like for example, your children when they go to school participate in data management systems and testing systems that the textbook companies then use their personal children's information and results. Then they use that information to create new textbook products and new curricula. Why is your children's test scores and their data being used to make money for giant corporations without any remuneration back to the child? My friend John Robb, who you may know, is a technologist and a strategist and an analyst, and he understands this. And he's proposed an internet bill of rights. He's proposed figuring out ways to make it so that you own your data from the very beginning, and we can conduct microtransactions, and you can pay the children for helping this corporation make money off of their back. And it's something that's really important. And as you said, we don't have much. There's not a long time to figure this out because the way that the system works, I think, it's almost going to be a shut door eventually if we don't crack down on this. But I want to drill back down on one thing you said, which was you want to change the laws. Congratulations. Kudos to you as a candidate for the legislature suggesting that we actually legislate and we have open debate on the floor of the Congress. To me, this is one of the biggest criticisms that we have of the Republic in general today is that the legislature is not legislating, and and they've put this off to the administrative state. The administrative state makes a ruling. Someone doesn't like it. That goes before the court. The court decides. Basically, now the court, the judiciary, and the administrative state are legislating. We've seen in the 18 months of Corona, no open debate on the floor of Congress about mandates or this or that. How would you bring the spirit of legislation back to the legislature? Sounds like a dumb question. But truly, though,
It's
how
not
do
a dumb
we?
question. That's hard.
Yeah. So
It's
how do
it's
we do
hard,
that?
and I think you do it by trying. Like I remember in law school reading about Chevron deference, and the sort of court case that kind of cemented the court's willingness to tolerate this huge delegation of power from Congress to the administrative agencies. And it's crazy. It's like we've created a fourth branch of government, even worse because it's unaccountable, unelected, right? It's unconstitutional. It's really crazy. And so I look at Congress and I see a legislative body that's kind of unwilling to do its job, and now that's becoming the new normal. So I hate it. And yeah, maybe as one senator, I can't like immediately change that, but I think I can. I think I can make a lot of noise. I think I can make it uncomfortable. My attitude is I'll go in, I'll introduce bills, I'll vote the right way. Um, but yeah, one senator can't pass legislation. Fine. Well, I will shine the flashlight on, the system and the people who are preventing, this bill from getting a hearing, who are preventing this debate from happening. I think most people, when they go in, you become temperamentally conservative. You don't want to ruffle feathers. You don't want to rock the boat. And, because I think all the senators want to be president, and the way to be president is to look very presidential and like just go along to get along until it's your turn or something like that. And I think it's complete crap. Um, I want to go in and change things. I want to take the proverbial machete in and start clearing out brush, because we're drowning in processes that no longer work. And I think it's only exciting to get, like, DC sucks. Being a senator, you're under the microscope. It's sort of hellish on your family. Like, it's not fun. Like, I guarantee you, my job right now is fun. Running Peter Thiel's family office, like, people would kill for that job. It's great. And I feel like it's really important to get in and actually ruffle feathers and change things. And so, how much can one person do? Like, I don't know, but I intend to find out. And I think you get a few of us in there. Now you get a new caucus, and you sort of change the vibe, expand the Overton window, change what people are willing to talk about. There's also a huge opportunity to just understand and ensure the sort of administrative details of the Senate, the procedural rules. I think water is actually a lot more powerful than people think, in terms of being able to force certain debates or block certain things. And so, yeah, I mean, I intend to just go in and raise hell, because we need people to do that. Otherwise, we're in big trouble.